Do you have a view on esports long term, or how do you just view esports right now? What's in the ecosystem?
I definitely do. Okay, so like my background is obviously in esports. I'm pretty passionate about it from an individual standpoint. I think the biggest issue with esports is the expectations of it are the spectrum of the expectations is so broad, right? Like you look at some esports like Arena Free Fire and these PUBG mobile ones and the ones that are kind of blowing up and they're marketing vessels. Then you have like the League of Legends and Overwatch and Call of Duty leagues where it's like all this money's being poured and there's a lot of expectations in them. And then you have people talking like, esports is going to be bigger than sports in like 3 years, right? And so these expectations are just like all over the place, which is the biggest issue, right? So I think if everyone tempered expectations and said, look, it took the NFL like 100 some years to get where it is today, right? That like we would have this much more like sustainable, thoughtful growth that's happening in esports because we are, right? I think there's this unnecessary top down pressure from people that expect esports to be bigger than the NFL tomorrow, right? And so we cut up these viewership numbers in weird ass ways to like say that it is, right? So I believe long term they will. I think young people are tuning into gaming more than ever. I think that will help build the foundation for esports. I think they're tuning out of things like Major League Baseball. I think humans are naturally competitive. A lot of humans are naturally competitive. And so if you like video games and you like a certain game and it has esports, I can see that interest and people continue to grow in it. I think dollars are going to long term shift away from linear sports into digital esports, right? I think people just need to be okay at the pace in which it's happening. If I look at this whole industry, esports watch time is like 10%. The way people talk about it is like it's 90%. And that therein lies my issue with it. So I'm bullish long term on esports, but it's funny because when I share my insights or input on it, I would be deemed a bearish individual on esports for not expecting it to be like the biggest thing ever in the next 3 years. So I don't know how to reconcile that in conversation in these moments, but long term, I'm a big believer in it, and I think, like I said, people like watching people compete at the highest level, no matter what it is, right? And so that's not going to go anywhere. I think that's a big part of like again humans' DNA. So it'll be big. It's going to be big, and these games have big user bases, and the top of that is competing at the highest level, and so it's going to keep moving. I just think it depends on what your expectation is and at what time.
Do you guys think that you'll continue to pay for media rights? I know you guys have the Call of Duty League. I believe you also had some kind of deal with the NALCS. Like, is it something that going into 2021, 2022 that you guys will continue to do?
Yeah, so I mean the Activision Blizzard stuff, it was like we looked at Activision Blizzard and Google partnership macro level, and we had a great cloud component and a great YouTube component of that, and that was kind of like we talked about on that in our press release. And so yeah, I think it's so situational, right? Like I think at the end of the day, like even taking YouTube aside, if we're gonna write checks for media, it's for media rights, that's not the problem. It's what is the expectation for that check relative to our ability to recoup on it, right? And so no, we can't just write checks for marketing reasons. Like you can't rationalize media rights from a marketing lens only. And so if there's not a path to recoup on these deals, then read no, like we can't, right? It's not sustainable economics. And so I think it takes platforms and partners figuring that out, right? The economics have to work, right? Like it's not that I'm not opposed to writing checks where it makes sense, right? I think people are investing a lot of time, energy, and money into these leagues, right? Like, I think it's fair for platforms to have to write a check to acquire this content at some point, right? Can't be just marketing rationale for a lot of these companies on either side. Having said that, though, like, I think the economics are upside down when you can't have like sell all the sponsorships and then only allocate like the ad media, but then ask for big checks, right? So there's a lot of things that everyone has to work through, but I think we'll get there, right? I think, you know, they add so much value, esports leagues, to the platforms. Like we'll get there, we'll figure it out. I think everybody's mutually interested in figuring that out. So I'm encouraged long term. Yes, we'll write checks. Depends on if it's non-exclusive or exclusive, and it depends on where they're at. I don't think it's the only way to drive value to esports league. I think it's again, it depends, right? Like, should we be? Are we at a point in esports where we need to be writing massive checks for leagues, or are the checks being warranted because we've franchised and moved that funnel so quickly as well, right? It's like, where are we at? Again, this is the whole issue with you can't have platform here, publisher here, teams here, right? Like we are not aligned on where this space is at. And so therefore expectations aren't aligned, money's not aligned. There's a lot of things that are misaligned in esports.
Yeah.
We'll get there though. To answer your question, we'll get there. I believe in that. I
Yeah.
do, and I think it will continue to be valuable to the game space.